Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. My name is Xiyue, and I'm really sorry that I can't be there at the conference. I am a PhD student at the Department of Art History, and Visual Studies at Duke University. I will be presenting about Japanese female curators and feminist solidarity since the 1990s. First, I would like to briefly introduce the structure of my presentation. I will talk about Kasahara Michiko and Hasegawa Yuko shortly, followed by a brief history of feminism in Japan. Then I will go into Kasahara and Hasegawa's curatorial practices in the 1990s. At the end, I will introduce alternative spaces in recent years that helped form feminist solidarity outside of the large institutions. So Kasahara Michiko is one of the few curators focusing specifically on photography and feminism. During her time at the Tokyo Photographic Art Museum, she held many first feminist and gender-themed exhibitions during the 1990s, challenging traditional gender discourses and evoking intense discussions. She is now the director of Nagano Prefectural Museum of Art and deputy director of the Artisan Museum. She used to work at Tokyo Photographic Art Museum and the Museum of Contemporary Art, Tokyo. Hasegawa Yuko, as one of the most internationally influential Japanese curators. Her practices covers a wide range of media and topics. Yet photography and gender have always been explored quite often in her earlier career in the 1990s. She currently holds positions at various universities and is the former director of the 21st Century Museum of Contemporary Art, Kanazawa, and was the artistic director of the Museum of Contemporary Art, Tokyo until 2021. So I will briefly introduce the history of Japanese feminism since the 1970s, putting the curatorial practices of them in a more specific historical context. Influenced by the second feminism movement, Japanese women joined the women's liberation movement in the 1970s, which was referred to as the Libu. Libu is considered the pioneer and base stone for the formation of feminism studies in Japan. It advocated the reform of consciousness and a controversial sex liberation. After Libu, from 1978 to 1983, Joseigaku, or the study of women, was formally established. Western feminism theories were later introduced into Japan from 1984 to 1990. From 1991 to 2000, new gender theory and the idea of gender-free directed the focus of direction from female to gender, which again received attacks and criticism from mass media and politicians. With the rise of conservative ideologies since the late 1990s, a backlash against both feminism and gender studies arose, advocating the important dualism of women being feminine and men being masculine. The discussion about feminism in the art world, however, did not happen until the early 90s, whose history can be grasped in Kujawsko, one of the most influential Japanese art magazines. The word feminism first appeared in the magazine in April 1991. A later July issue was fully dedicated to the theme, Traces of Femininity, Women and Art. It was in the exact same year, 1991, that the first feminist art exhibition in Japan, Unknown Self-Portraits of Contemporary Women, was held at Tokyo Metropolitan Museum of Photography, now the Tokyo Photographic Art Museum. Kasahara Michiko, just returned from New York, had been working on this exhibition since 1989. This exhibition featured more than 100 pieces of self-portrait photographs by 18 female photographers from the United States, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Germany, and Japan, invoking the audience's thoughts on not only the representation of female bodies, but also the object versus subject, and seeing versus being seen relationships in photography. It was also the first large-scale public exhibition of female bodies, especially nudity, and undoubtedly aroused diversifying reactions from different parties. While the exhibition included a variety of keywords such as roleplay, costumes, personal memories, private documentary, and youth and beauty, I would like to focus on the representation and discussion of body, a theme constantly brought up in Kasahara's later exhibitions. The difference in visual presentation of and the objectification of female bodies, explored by Judy later, the rejection of all kinds of gazes in Susan Hiller's both ID photos, the nuanced difference in male and female nudity in Barbara Derenevev's sarcastic works, and the confrontation with the obsession of youth and beauty by Anne Noggle and Isshu Shimiako were discussed in this exhibition. Of the 18 artists, there was only one Japanese, Isshu Shimiako, who has maintained a long-lasting relationship with Kasahara since then. They have cooperated many times in the following years. Once was when Kasahara curated the solo exhibition of Ishiuchi at the 51st Venice Biennale in 2005, which gave Ishiuchi more international attention. In a talk session held in 2018 between them, Ishiuchi shared that they were drinking together every night in Venice. It is noteworthy that Kasahara opened her discussion on the section of denial of the objectification of body, with reference to male nude photography exhibition held in New York in 1978, reflecting on the critics' fear that photography male bodies, in the exact same way that women have been for centuries, would result in the objectification of men, and therefore malign the authority of men and deny the personality of the subject. She sarcastically exemplified the power hierarchy hidden behind the representation of bodies, which men are well aware of and grasping tightly onto. While male and female, as terms received in the heterosexual hegemony, were key in this exhibition, Kasahara did not forget to emphasize how gay artists try to represent their identity and sexuality as well in such works. The concern for the body beyond gender and sexuality laid the foundation for her later exhibitions, which have broader perspectives. Although being the first feminist exhibition in Japan, this exhibition did not meet very strong resistance, and the reviews were generally positive. In her review on September's Asahi camera, Hasegawa Yuko, working at the Art Tower Mito back then, expressed how she was touched by the quote-unquote pain and sadness filling the exhibition space. However, very few female artists back in the 1980s and 1990s would openly identify as feminist because it was considered hysterical. With such a strong feminist declaration stance, the significance of both Kasahara Michiko's curatorial practices and this exhibition can never be overemphasized in the history of Japanese female art. In the late 1990s, with the introduction of gender theories, the art world saw an open discussion on gender as well. The word gender first appeared in Biju's Techo in 1996 in a review of Kasahara's another exhibition, Gender Beyond Memory, the works of contemporary women artists, held at Tokyo Metropolitan Museum of Photography, which featured 11 artists and was considered a continuation of her previous exhibition. While new words such as sexuality and gender were frequently used in Gender Beyond Memory, they were received in the heterosexual discourse. It was not until 1997 that another whole issue of Biju's Techo was dedicated to sexuality and gender, the same year that Hasegawa Yuko curated the Degenderism, a groundbreaking and provocative exhibition that transcended its era. Degenderism was held at the Setagaya Art Museum in 1997, marking the museum's 10th anniversary. Again, we should remember that until then, gender was still used in the male versus female dualist discourse. different from how nowadays it refers to the fluidity and diversity of sexuality and gender. As Hasegawa explained, one of the motives for this exhibition was her doubt about exhibitions merely about women that might restrain the diversified expressions of self-identity, which constitute one's quote unquote, true and unadorned body. Therefore, the gender that Hasegawa attempted to deconstruct was the dualistic separation and opposition between masculinity and femininity. Degenderism, as she writes, implies a double leap, recognizing the existence of unknown, diverse values, and placing the self, which lives amid this, in the position of the other, the outside, all of which were elaborated very perfectly in the works of the 15 exhibited artists. Body, that the pivotal and recurring theme in Kasahara's curatorial practices, was also central for this exhibition. Hasegawa emphasized a return to the sheer physical existence, that is, the body. Artists such as Matthew Barney, Marie-Anne Guilleminot, and Ma Liu-Ming explored the relationship between body, especially the inside of the body, with direct eroticism and fetishism. The bold, and we may even say grotesque representation of genitals, reproductive system, and other private parts were powerful in challenging and dissolving people's preconceptions of body and sexuality. The degenderism was not limited only to the discourse of gender and sexuality. While body might have been a widely explored keyword in many gender-themed exhibitions, what separated the degenderism from them and endowed it with an essence that transcends time was Hasegawa's insights on the otherness, the thing lurking behind the gaze, which produces countless representations of the body. By including artists who explored the otherness, both within and outside oneself, such as Rebecca Horn, Mona Hatom, Marina Abramovic, and Vitola Conchi, Hasegawa eradicated the narrow otherness opposed between only two genders and expanded to a more universal connection in the world, the connection with other beings, objects, and machines. Embracing the vanguard international art movement and theories, Hasegawa has also consistently affirmed the distinctiveness of Japanese art and aesthetics. She drew on the Japanese cultural tradition of playfully enjoying gender swapping and a uniquely entangled gender background, such as the famous Torikaebaya Monogatari, the challenging story from the Heian period, in which a boy and a girl switch gender roles. The concept of degenderism incorporated these feminine qualities in pre-modern Japanese culture, mono no aware, the transitoriness, as well as feeling and beauty over rationality. The exhibited Japanese artists with these delicate qualities, like Katogo and Minako Nishiyama, offered a unique perspective concerning the body and gaze within Japanese social circumstances and discourses, such as the exploitation of the sexuality of young girls and frail masculinity in the collective society. This exhibition was amongst the turbulence of the arguments on gender during the late 1990s, and it was heavily criticized by feminists as well, because Hasegawa was deconstructing the gender consciousness that they finally established, while she acknowledges that social significance of gender politics. As a curator, however, it was not her tactics to simply transplant such frameworks to exhibitions. However, we should not assume that Hasegawa does not care about feminism simply because this exhibition attempted to deconstruct gender. She has worked with many female artists, some of which also maintain long-lasting friendships and collaborated with her for many times, such as the Sana, Maria Mariko, and Sputniko. She has also strived to introduce Japanese female artists to the international art world. For example, her essay Performativity in the Work of Female Japanese Artists in the 1950s to 1960s and the 1990s was included in the book Modern Women Artists at the Museum of Modern Art. connected the practices of different generations of female artists, forming an alternative her story of Japanese contemporary art. These researches culminated in her book, Destroy the Sea, Women Artists, Subtly Traversing Boundaries, published in 2017. This book is a collection of essays on around 40 female artists that Hasegawa has exhibited or collaborated with in her career. In the following years, museums have held exhibitions about gender from time to time. For example, 2 exhibitions titled Love's Body, curated by Kasahawa in 1998 and 2010. The later one, Love's Body, Art in the Age of AIDS, boldly exposes the social prejudice and discrimination surrounding AIDS, and prompted foundational question of the very nature of photography and art, expanding her focus from female artists to the LGBTQ community as well. At the same time, Kasahara also constantly reflected on her own limitation as a cisgender heterosexual curator, which I consider as a very sincere gesture of a curator offering visibility to these groups. But I would like to lead us back to now and briefly direct our attention to the emerging independent and alternative spaces in Tokyo, which have started to take crucial roles in building networks, connections between fellow female artists, curators, and researchers. Unlike the large institutions run by independent communities, these spaces are compact, flexible, lively, and inclusive. One of the spaces I would like to introduce is the Ona Project Room, run by a group of female artists. One of the founders is a Japan-based Polish artist, Ewelina Skowronska, and the word Ona is a linguistic single of female in both Japanese, which refers to women or female, and in Polish, which means her. Born out of a desire to give a voice to female artists, especially still underrepresented ones, the project promotes and supports emerging artists that identify as female through a series of pop-up exhibitions and events. It is located in an alternative space called Untitled in the Sumida district among an old neighborhood. From 2021 to 2023, they held 19 exhibitions featuring emerging, self-identifying female artists, both Japanese and foreigners, active artists in Japan. Right next to the exhibition space is a common workspace for everyone in this community. Many of the artists and curators exhibited in this space have built strong bonds and connections, and they always support each other by showing up and promoting exhibitions. It did not only provide a space and an opportunity for emerging female artists to exhibit their works for better visibility, but more importantly, it functioned as a common space for forming feminist solidarity outside of the institutional museum and star artist system. Other forms of alternative spaces are also contributing to the large discourse of feminism. ETC Book is a bookstore and publisher established in 2018, and based in Tokyo, it specializes in delivering feminist voices. The bookstore is also a common space for various events such as reading clubs and exhibitions. Tokyo-based artist and musician Emilia Wang conducted an interview with the founder Akiko Matsuo and published an English article. One aspect about the independent spaces is how foreign artists residing in Tokyo are also an integral part of their community. And the solidarity between fellow females is therefore beyond identity and nationality. In recent years, there seemed to be a revival of feminist exhibition in large museums as well. As for example, the exhibitions that I have put up here. New generations of curators and artists have inherited the legacy and efforts by their presidents, or in Japanese, their senpai, constantly forming new solidarities and contributing to the feminist art scene in Japan. Thank you very much.